Okay, people, the worksheet, the assignment you need is posted in Canvas, and it looks like this. So I'm doing the screen, this video cast or whatever it's called, because it will allow us to go at different paces. I can go through this entire paper a lot quicker, and you can pause and stop it at your own pace, because we have to do a couple sets of those notes like we did in class where we did the coloring, except we're not going to do the coloring part, but still I can just get through the notes quicker. And like I said, you can stop and pause. And if you need to print this paper ahead of time, then you can. So I'm going to record this. I'm going to post it in Canvas. And then during class, you can open up your own assignment, play the video, and do this at your own pace. So I made this file that looks like this. And this says to start in the review, what are 3 molecules that need to get from either food or air to your cells? And this just goes back to the simulator where we talked about these 8 different molecules. And the ones that I put on here, and the ones are going to come up a lot today in this assignment, are oxygen and glucose, which, as you guys know, glucose together will build starch molecules. And then amino acids are 3 molecules that we get from either the food or the air that need to get to our cells. The glucose and the amino acids comes from food. And the second one, how are molecules from food and the air transported to our cells? And that's going to come up again today a lot. We talked about this in class. Once I breathe in oxygen into my lungs, how does the oxygen get to my cells so that cellular respiration can happen, that long chemical equation we talked about? And the answer is that it's carried in our blood. And then what part of a cell lets things in? This is the one we've talked about repeatedly over and over with the balloon activity in class, and with the cell model with the Baggy and the Lugol's. Which part of the cell is responsible for letting things in and out of the cell? And the answer is the cell membrane. And number 4, where in the body does carbon dioxide leave the circulatory system? We haven't talked about the circulatory system, but this is asking where in the body. So if your blood is transporting molecules, where would your blood drop that waste carbon dioxide off? So the carbon dioxide is made in your cells, like we talked about during cellular respiration. When glucose is turned into energy, or ATP, carbon dioxide is made, and then it needs waste, so it needs to get out of your cell and out of your body. So your blood picks it up from your cells, and then it will transport it from your cells to your lungs, where you will then exhale that waste carbon dioxide. And then on number 5 for our review, where in the cell is the glucose that you eat in your food turned into energy, or ATP? So that's that equation we talked about. Sorry, I keep making that sound. I'm not even sick, but now that I started trying to talk a bunch, I feel like I'm congested. But so when that equation we talked about where we said glucose and oxygen are, I'm gonna make this smaller. We've talked about this a bunch, especially the week right before we went back to online. The glucose, or the sugar that we eat, plus the oxygen we breathe in. I don't think this will turn into an arrow for me. Gets turned into carbon dioxide, waste, water, waste, and then energy, also known as ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So where this happens in our cells, this process of turning the glucose and oxygen into energy, where in our cells does that happen? And the specific organelle that we mentioned is right here, the mitochondria. It looks like this little bean. You can see there's more than one. There's one nucleus in a cell, in the middle, but there can be a lot of mitochondria. In fact, if you are active, if you're a distance runner or a cyclist or a swimmer, your cells can actually produce more mitochondria so that your body is more efficient at making this. So our answer is that it is the mitochondria that this happens. Okay, I'm gonna try to talk faster so that this video is only, I want to keep this video to like 15 minutes so that it's not too big to post in Canvas. So on the next page, we start our notes, and we have the respiratory system notes here, and then the digestive system notes as well. So the respiratory system is the group of organs in your body that's responsible for getting oxygen in to your body so that it can be taken to your cells, and carbon dioxide out. So it's just the process of getting the oxygen into your body. The transport of the oxygen to your cells, that's the blood, and that would be the circulatory system, not the respiratory system. So the purpose of the respiratory system is only gas exchange. That means it's only to get carbon dioxide out. I'll write this. The whole purpose of the respiratory organs is only to get carbon dioxide out of your blood and then to replace it with new, fresh oxygen going into your blood. That's the purpose of the respiratory system organs. So quickly here, effort to keep this video shorter. You can pause as you want or need to. So the respiratory system, we could start with any one of these really, these organs, but I'll just start up here at the nasal cavity, C. So the nasal cavity is responsible for making the air moist, and then to filter the hairs in your nose, to filter the air before it goes into the passageway that leads to your lungs. This is, you can look this up. We don't have time to talk about this, but it's one of the reasons why nose breathing, there's a lot of reasons, but nose breathing is much healthier for you than mouth breathing. And part of the reason is because it allows the oxygen to stay in your lungs longer, but also just because it allows you to filter the air, especially in the winter when it's dry and there's a lot more particles that can, make you sick. And so if nose breathing is a healthier way to breathe, it's a healthier habit. Even when you're exercising, if you can try to nose breathe instead of breathe out of your mouth. So C, nasal cavity, air goes in through your nose, your mouth, and it enters here, and it goes down past this little flap called the epiglottis. The epiglottis is important because that little flap will close when you're trying to swallow. So that's why you can't, if you try to inhale and swallow at the same time, you can't do it. The epiglottis prevents that. You can inhale food, however, and choke, but you can't swallow food into your lungs. So the air goes in your nasal cavity, down past the epiglottis, and into what you may have called your windpipe. It's also known as the trachea. And the trachea is going to connect your nasal cavity down to your lungs. So the air travels down. Sorry, my kids are distracting. After the trachea, air is going to go either left. Sorry, this is actually left this way. It's the human's left, the person's left. So left or right into the left or right bronchi, which is the first main branching of the lungs. G is pointing to as I said, that's the human's right or left. It's not our perspective. So G is pointing to the right lung. The left lung would be over on this side. I don't know if you guys can see my pointer. I hope you can. So it's the right lung. You can see it has 1, 2, 3 lobes. The left lung actually only has 2 lobes. It's a little bit smaller because the The heart takes up a lot of space on that side of the body. So the right lung, 3 lobes, left lung, 2 lobes. So the air goes nasal cavity, trachea, left and right bronchi, and then it goes down to even smaller. After the left and right bronchi, the air continues on through this branch, and you can see inside the lungs, it looks like almost like tree branches. So it continues in the branching. After the bronchi, the smaller, on here, the green, yellow, and blue branching is called the bronchioles. And I just wrote smaller branching of the lungs. The branches just keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller until you get all the way to the very end of the branching, and that's what's called alveoli. And so that's the very end of all these branches. I guess if you call the lungs look like a tree with branches, the very end of the branching would be the leaves, and that's the alveoli. The alveoli is where the oxygen ends up. It goes into the mouth, nose, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles. Gets all the way to the end of the branching, and it's in the alveoli, which is what this picture is over here. The last branching of the lungs. It's in the alveoli. The oxygen will actually leave the lungs and go into the blood. At the same time, the blood is dropping off carbon dioxide while it picks up oxygen. So alveoli is the final branching of the lungs. This is where that gas exchange, oxygen in, carbon dioxide out, happens. And these blood vessels, B is this right here is a blood vessel. These blood vessels, a lot of you have heard of veins and arteries. Some of you have heard of capillaries. Capillaries are the smallest blood vessels. They're so small you can even see here that I guess that's supposed to be an oxygen. No, that might be a red blood cell. I can't tell what that's supposed to be. But if it's a red blood cell, these blood vessels are so small that the cells, only one cell can fit through here at a time. So B is called a capillary, and the capillaries are the smallest of the blood vessels. Okay, lastly, for the respiratory system is H right here. This is the muscle that controls breathing. When your brain says to inhale or signals to exhale, it's actually this muscle down here that changes the pressure inside of your chest that draws air in and out of your mouth or your nose. So the muscle is called the diaphragm, and it's the muscle that controls breathing. In class, usually at this point, we'd make this little model with a balloon and a bottle that looks like this. That shows how the diaphragm works. So the bottom down here, this pink thing he's pulling on is the diaphragm. That's the muscle. And you can see inside, so the bottle would be like your chest or your ribs. This pink straw would be your trachea. And the balloon inside is your lungs. You can see as the diaphragm contracts, that changes the pressure and it draws air into your lungs. So diaphragm contracting, lungs fill up, diaphragm relaxes, exhale. And you can make one of these at home if you wanted to. They're really simple. And there's a ton of videos online on how to do it, but to cut a bottle off, you need 2 balloons, a little bit of clay, and a straw. I'm going to continue on to the digestive system. If you got behind a little bit, like I said, you can just pause and fill these things in. I'm already at 15 minutes. I got to go faster. So the digestive system is very similar to the respiratory system. The respiratory system, you need to get oxygen in and carbon dioxide out. In the digestive system, you need to get, instead of oxygen into your blood, you need to get nutrients into your blood. And digestion starts in your mouth. And There's two kinds of digestion that happen in your mouth. The first kind is with your teeth. It's called mechanical digestion, where you break food down into smaller pieces. And the second one is going to come up a lot. It's called chemical digestion. That's with these chemicals called enzymes. And that'll come up a couple times. Digestive enzymes are important. So I think next we would do F, the salivary glands. So it's the salivary glands that are going to release the saliva into your mouth that mixes with the food to help soften the food, and more importantly, to the salivary glands release digestive enzymes that are going to start breaking down the food chemically in your mouth. You'll notice if we talk about enzymes, they tend to end in the ASE. So amylase is the name of one of the enzymes that's in your saliva that breaks down carbohydrates. So after you mix that food and chew it up, you have that little ball that you swallow. It's called a bolus, and it goes down B, which is not your trachea, but instead it's your esophagus. And the bolus will move from your mouth down to your stomach. And there's muscle contractions that cause this. It's called peristalsis. That's why it's not just gravity. I mean, if you stand on your hands, you can still swallow up against gravity because there's muscle contractions that are called peristalsis that move food from your mouth to your stomach. Once food is in your stomach, the main function of the stomach is to just continue to mix the food that you swallowed. So there's going to be more enzymes in your stomach that are released, along with this chemical called bile. The bile is really important for breaking down tough to digest fats. And so in your stomach, it's just kind of a harsh environment full of mixing and chemicals to just break that bigger molecules, the bigger chunks of food into smaller and smaller pieces. So like I said, the mixing is going to be mechanical digestion. The bile and the enzymes is going to be chemical digestion in your stomach. After let's back up. Let's go. Your liver, you've all heard of your liver. Your liver has a ton of functions in the digestive system. The main function of the liver is to create that bile we just talked about. And then your pancreas, the main function of the pancreas is to create those digestive enzymes that we keep mentioning. Another little organ here, this green one, I, is the gallbladder. The purpose of the gallbladder is after the bile is created in the liver, it is stored in the gallbladder before it is secreted into the stomach to break down fats. So now after we're in the stomach and we have all this food that's been mixed together with the bile and the enzymes, and it's been broken down into smaller and smaller molecules, then it moves on from your stomach into your small intestine. And it's in the small intestine, just like in the respiratory system, where air moves through your lungs to your alveoli, and it's in your alveoli that the air or the oxygen actually goes into your blood. It's in the small intestine where the nutrients are actually broken down. They're small enough that they can now move into your blood. And it's the specific part of the small intestine called the villi that this happens. So the villi is a lot like the alveoli. The alveoli is the final branching of the lungs. The villi are these little fingers inside of the small intestine where the capillaries can circulate the blood and pick up any digested nutrients and sugar, etc. After the nutrients are absorbed in the small intestine, the food is going to move to the large intestine. It's in the large intestine that last little bit of water and anything else that's beneficial in the food is going to be absorbed out before the waste is eliminated. So the food starts to be digested in your mouth. The bolus moves down your esophagus into your stomach. After your stomach, the food moves to your small intestine where the nutrients are absorbed, and then into the large intestine. Sorry, my kids are upstairs making a lot of noise and it's very difficult. I can't really start this video over. So it's very frustrating here. Okay, the digestive enzymes we talked a lot about in this digestive system notes. But if I drew it as I try to draw it as an illustration. We've talked a lot about starches getting broken down into smaller molecules called glucose. And it's enzymes that do that. So we know that first part, we just haven't used the word enzymes very much. But when starches interact or react with enzymes, they get broken down into smaller pieces called glucose. And we also use the example of proteins getting broken down into amino acids with the help of digestive enzymes. Now, the last part of this, what I was going to do is right here, part 3. I was going to play this little video for you first, which is this activity that you're supposed to do in class. I don't usually do it because it's kind of lame, but the actual video is useful, so we'll watch that quick.
In the model for today, you will have index cards with a hole in them, representing the villi and the alveoli. Let's take a closer look at each of these structures to find out what they do. Villi are part of the digestive system. They are tiny finger-like parts that line our small intestines. Inside the villi, we can see tiny blood vessels. Looking even closer, we can see the cells that make up the villi walls. Molecules from the food we eat can pass through the villi cells into the bloodstream. Watch how these glucose molecules are moving into the bloodstream. This is also what happens with molecules of amino acids. The bloodstream carries glucose and amino acids to every cell in the body. Now that we have seen the structure of the villi, let's take a look at the alveoli. The alveoli are part of the respiratory system. They are located at the very end of the branching tubes of the lungs. The alveoli are tiny sacs covered in blood vessels. Looking inside the alveoli, you can see the air from each breath. We can also see red blood cells. Let's look even closer. These are molecules of oxygen in the air we breathe. The oxygen molecules can pass through the alveoli into the red blood cells. The bloodstream delivers the oxygen to every cell in the body. Even though the villi and alveoli are found in different parts of the body, they have similar functions. They are both transfer points for molecules to enter the bloodstream. That is why they are both represented by the same thing in the model, an index card with a hole in it. There's one more index card in the model. It represents the cell membrane of every cell in the body. The cell membrane is much smaller than the villi or alveoli. However, like the villi and alveoli, the cell membrane is a transfer point for molecules. The cell membrane allows certain molecules to enter and leave the cell. In your model today, all 3 transfer points are represented by index cards with holes in them.
So back to the questions. Trying to be quick here. What is the role of the villi in the digestive system? We've said that in our notes and we saw it in the video. This is where nutrients actually move out of the digestive system into the blood. Why is it important that glucose can get from the small intestine into the blood? Because the blood is where it's going to be transported. The glucose would be transported. If the lungs were a tree, which part would the alveoli be? And we said in our notes it would be like the leaves. It's the last part of the branching. And how are the alveoli, villi, and cell membranes similar to each other? They all allow things to move through them. Now, your assignment is going to be to finish. Here, I'll do this quick with you. It's going to be to finish the rest of this. If you finish the rest of this, you can email me, and I will send you an answer key. So if you just say, Mr. Smith, I finished the assignment, can I have the answers? I'll send it to you. Part 4 might be a little confusing. I'm not going to go through it like I had planned because I don't want this video to be any longer than it is. So try part 4. Otherwise, part 5 and part 6, you should be able to do pretty easily. It should take you 10 minutes. You have to go to Amplify. Remember, here's all your clicks to get there. It's a reading assignment, so you read, answer the questions. Shouldn't take you that long. If you finish, email me. I'll tell you the answers, and then you can be done. And you can let me know if you have questions. All right, if you're still watching, nice job.